this brings us to the next period. We were very fortunate, for the Navajos were very fortunate in people like the Wild West shows. Remember, you've heard a lot of those things. The Wild West, they brought the Indians to the east, and they had these trails, and the Indians were fighting, and they brought all this. But it also brought one other thing. It brought an interest by the east, Philadelphia, New York. That's why if you go to New York, you see Indian blankets. Good place to go. Because right at about 1890, there's a tremendous interest in the American Indian because of the Wild West shows. And because those Wild West shows brought this interest, people wanted to buy things from the Native Americans. But what are they making? You see, nobody wanted to put that in their home. That's an eye dazzle. That doesn't fit in a New York mansion. That's not the colors they like. So what happened is in 1890, the traders come in, they start the trade stores, the trading posts. A lot of you visited the trading posts, some of them are very old. The trading post is what saved the blanket industry for the Native American. Now, we call that period in 1890. They didn't want blankets. They didn't want blankets to wear. What they wanted was, they wanted rugs to put on the floor. They wanted dollies to go across their dressers. They didn't want armbands, but they wanted these things in their home. They wanted hallway runners. They wanted rugs on the floor. They wanted dollies that they could put on the table. They wanted those things, but they didn't want those colors. What the traders did was, they sat down and they said, we're going to give you what they want. We're going to give you the colors they want. We're going to tell you what they're looking for. We're going to tell you what symbols to put on the rugs. And now we go into what's called the rug period. And the rug period is one in which the trading posts now are starting to sell a lot of the Indians things, the end of the transitional period and the beginning of the rug period. And the last two are rugs. And you can see how much bigger they are compared to the blankets. What this did was, this was a rug. You can see how much bigger it is than anything else you see out there. This was put on the floor. What is the, Granado liked red. Red was very acceptable. You can see how brilliant the colors are in this rug. Now, also, take a look at the center. What are they doing? They're going back to the basic classic design period. And so you begin to see this, what they call the step triangle. Now the reason I brought this rug out was because of this symbol. This symbol changes later on. It becomes very close looking to the Nazi symbol. It's called the whirling log. And the reason I did that was, remember we talked about how important it was for the blanket makers. This was a Navajo symbol. This was not a Spanish symbol. The story of how this began was, there was a young man, young Indian, Native American, who decided that everybody owed him something. He did not have to hunt. He did not have to work. The tribe would supply him food. He was lazy, no direction. So the tribe came to him and said, you are no longer part of our tribe. If you're not going to work, and you're not going to help us as a unit, we don't want you here. You cannot be with us anymore. So here he was, oh well, no big deal. I'll live on myself. You know how the attitude of the young people are sometimes. I could do it myself. I remember I had that attitude one time. My dad almost shot me, but he didn't have a gun, thank goodness. But anyway, the bottom line was, he was exercised. He had no place to go. He lived by himself. And he was sitting by a stream, and he saw these two logs cross. And the story goes that the logs were whirling. And it said to him he needed to turn his life around. So he decided, when the Navajo Indians moved, you have to understand, they had to move quickly with the herds. There were people that had to lag behind that were slower. Those the older people and the women and the children sometimes. What he decided to do was, when somebody started to lag too far behind, he took care of them. He brought them food, he helped get them to there, and when he got close to the village, he turned and left. He did this for years. And finally, one day, the chieftain came out to greet him. And he said, "You have changed. Turn your light to welcome back." That story created the whirling logs. Later on, the whirling logs looked like the swastika symbol. And I have one like that, several of them. And I don't put them out because people don't understand. What the Navajos did was, in 1940, they dropped it. They no longer put those symbols. And so, although the whirling log is still a sacred symbol to the Indians, they still tell the story, but they don't put it on their blankets. Now, to show you how important, you see these holes? They're on purpose. Remember how important a blanket is? So, if they didn't put in a line, they put a hole in it, a place for the spirit to leave the blanket when they're finished. Very interesting blanket. This is the beginning of the trade companies. This is what they were asking the Indians to do. This blanket, we have the centipede, which is kind of a clackatow design from the Indians. They wanted stars, the stiletto stars. They wanted arrows. They wanted water bugs. They wanted bows. They wanted a frame around the blanket. They ordered all of this, and that's how this rug was made. You see now, this is called a crystal rug. This goes back to the classical period. This goes back to, you're starting to see the crosses, the water bugs, the semi-pictorial blanket, but you're seeing basically the classical, and crystal was very known for this, back to the original colors. You don't see the huge colors they had available to them isn't in this blanket, because the crystal wanted to go back to classical colors and designs, the basics of what the classical, and yet modernize it enough so that people would be interested and see some of the culture the Indians had and the things that they cherished, and they put those into the rug. And you could order it from a catalog in New York, say, I want 2 stars, I want the centipede look, I want a cross in the center, I want 4 or 5 bows and arrows, and they'd make that rug for you and send it to you. You could order it through a catalog. And remember that sampler blanket I showed you? People would come in and they would see these sample blankets on the wall, and they would order what they wanted, and the Native Americans. You may say, what was so good about the trading post to the Indians, the Native Americans? It saved the blankets. It saved them. When the market fell out, all the young people didn't want to make it. When the trading post came in, it revived the need to make blankets. It revived the dream that blankets were important. And because the trading post saved the blanket industry, the Navajos still make rugs today, all because they were outsourced but not outdesigned. And people wanted part of history in their home, and they wanted something that had more heart than commercial value. And so the Navajo blanket today is still being made because people still like to know the beauty and what goes into making the Native American blanket. I hope you enjoyed it today. Hope I covered enough. It's thumbnail sisters.